Winter arrives early in Boston. Abigail Carter gazed at the snow falling outside the window as she huddled against the November cold. The small cafe on Maple Street, where she worked, was an anomaly in this upscale neighborhood. Abigail wiped the window glass, fogged by steam from the espresso machine, thinking she needed to leave early today. Her son, Liam, would soon be returning from school. "Abigail, you can finish up for today." "You need to pick up Liam, don't you?" Janet, the owner, smiled kindly. She was very understanding of Abigail's situation as a single mother. "Thank you, Janet. I really appreciate it." Abigail expressed her gratitude and quickly removed her apron. Her eyes always carried a hint of fatigue. Life as a single mother raising a 7-year-old son was never easy. Liam's father, Michael, had suddenly passed away in a car accident just 6 months after their son was born. For 7 years since then, Abigail had raised her son alone. Though modest, their life together was filled with love. On her way back to her small apartment, Abigail checked the mailbox. There was one elegant envelope addressed to her. When she opened it, an invitation printed in gold letters on high-quality white paper appeared. "You and Liam Carter are cordially invited to the wedding of Sophia Carter and Thomas Bradley." Abigail couldn't help but sigh. Her sister Sophia was getting married. Sophia, with her beauty and social skills, had become engaged to Thomas Bradley, the son of a local real estate magnate. Abigail carried the invitation to her apartment, filled with mixed emotions. "Mom." When she opened the door, Liam jumped up from the table where he'd been doing his homework and ran to her. His smile instantly washed away Abigail's fatigue. "How was your day? Did you have fun at school?" Abigail asked, embracing her son. "Yes, I got a perfect score on my math test," Liam answered proudly. While preparing dinner, Abigail thought about the invitation. Since her father, Henry, had died of a heart attack 3 years ago, she had been gradually distanced from her mother and sister. Her mother, Margaret, had always doted on her sister and been cold toward Abigail. Only her father had supported her, and now he was gone too. Abigail was uncertain whether she should attend the wedding. However, when Liam found the invitation during dinner, everything changed. "Auntie's wedding? I want to go," Liam said, his eyes shining. For him, this was a special event. Abigail smiled, but inside she felt anxious. How would her mother and sister treat her and Liam? At recent family gatherings, they had always been left out. That night, after Liam had gone to bed, Abigail sat on the small living room sofa and opened an old photo album. Looking at photos of memories with her father, she quietly shed tears. Henry Carter may have appeared to be a stern real estate company executive on the outside, but he was always kind to Abigail and respected her decisions. Since the day he died, Abigail felt as if her place within the family had completely disappeared. The next morning, Abigail called her sister Sophia. "Thank you for the invitation. We'll be coming." On the other end of the line, Sophia responded with a slightly surprised voice. "Oh, you're coming? How nice! Mother will be pleased too." Sensing the insincerity in those words, Abigail continued the conversation. "Liam is looking forward to it. It is his aunt's wedding after all." "Yes, of course. But can you and your son come in proper attire? Thomas's family members are all high society people." Those words hurt Abigail's heart, but she answered calmly, "Don't worry. We won't embarrass you." After ending the call, Abigail gazed at the snowy landscape outside the window. She resolved to attend this wedding for Liam's sake and for her late father. On the wedding day, the 5-star Regent Plaza Hotel in downtown Boston was adorned with elegant decorations. White roses and golden ribbons were gracefully arranged from the entrance to the main hall, and a crimson carpet was laid over the marble floor. Abigail and Liam stepped out of the taxi and entered the hotel with nervous expressions. Abigail had dipped into her savings to buy a modest navy blue dress for herself and a neat suit for Liam. Even so, compared to the lavish attire of the guests gathered in the lobby, the two of them clearly looked plain. The women were dressed in designer brand dresses, and the men were dressed in high-end tailored tuxedos. "Mom, everyone is so sparkly," Liam said in a small voice, his eyes reflecting curiosity and a little fear. "Yes, they are. But it's okay. We were invited here, so we should hold our heads high." Abigail gently put her arm around her son's shoulders. When they entered the ceremony venue, they were guided to seats at the back. In the church-like hall adorned with luxurious decorations, Sophia and Thomas's wedding was conducted in a sacred atmosphere. The bride, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, shone like a princess from a fairy tale. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the grand ballroom on the top floor of the hotel. There, a vast space that could easily accommodate 300 guests was decorated in champagne gold. The light pouring down from the giant chandeliers on the ceiling made it seem like a dream world. Abigail and Liam were guided to a small table at the edge. A card labeled "Carter Family Relatives" was placed on the table, but Margaret, Abigail's mother, was not there. She was seated at the head table. As the reception began, luxurious dishes were served one after another. Liam's eyes sparkled as he tried the high-end cuisine he had never seen before. Though tense, Abigail felt relieved seeing her son enjoying himself. Several times, she caught her mother's gaze, but Margaret quickly looked away. After the meal and the cutting of the wedding cake, the master of ceremonies stood up. "Now, from the bride and groom, we have a special entertainment for all our guests." Music began to play, and the lights in the venue dimmed. Suddenly, a spotlight illuminated the table where Abigail and Liam were sitting. They looked up in surprise. Sophia, gracefully wearing her pure white dress, approached from the central stage with a microphone in hand. There was a full smile on her face, however. Abigail sensed something lurking behind that smile. "Everyone, thank you so much for coming to my special day," Sophia said in a sweet voice. "But there's one more special thing today. Please look! This is my sister Abigail and her son Liam." All eyes in the venue turned to Abigail and Liam. Liam shrank in embarrassment and tightly held Abigail's hand. "As you can see, my sister is a single mother, and her son, my cute nephew, they live in a somewhat different world from us." Sophia's words were met with giggles from the venue. Abigail sat with a frozen expression. She could predict what was about to happen. "So today, I'd like to hold a special charity auction," Sophia declared loudly. "This single mother and her poor son as a set, would anyone like to buy them?" The venue erupted in laughter. People dressed in luxury brands were laughing, as if watching a circus sideshow. Tears began to well up in Liam's eyes. "Mom," he looked up at Abigail with a trembling voice. Abigail tried to stand up, but she froze at what happened next. Margaret stood up and took the microphone from Sophia. "Let me add something. This auction can start at $0, Margaret said with a laugh. "Because I don't think they have any value." Again, the venue filled with laughter. Abigail's chest felt like it would burst with anger and humiliation. Liam was now crying audibly. Seeing his small shoulders trembling, Abigail came to her senses. "Let's go, Liam," she said quietly and took her son's hand to stand up. But at that moment, a quiet yet powerful voice echoed from the back of the venue. $1 million. The venue fell silent. All eyes turned to the source of the voice. Standing there was a gentleman with a calm demeanor, with gray-tinged black hair and a well-maintained suit. His blue eyes were filled with calmness and dignity. "I'll buy this lady and her son for $1 million, the man said again. Sophia forced a smile and said, "Well, someone with a sense of humor. This is not a joke," the man said quietly and walked toward the center of the venue. "I am Charles Bennett, Henry Carter's attorney." Abigail gasped. Her father's attorney? She hardly knew any of her father's business associates, but she had heard this man's name. Charles walked to the center of the venue and looked toward Abigail and Liam. A small smile played on his lips. Then he slowly shifted his gaze and coldly looked at Sophia and Margaret. "Shall we continue this auction?" he said quietly, but with a dignified voice. Or shall we move on to the time to speak the truth? At Charles Bennet's words, the grand ballroom was enveloped in complete silence. Only the light from the chandeliers illuminated his composed face. The groom, Thomas, looked at his fiancée, Sophia, with a puzzled expression, and his parents exchanged worried glances. Before I speak, let me first apologize. Charles turned back to Abigail. Miss Abigail Liam, I deeply apologize for having to convey the truth in this manner today. However, this was the wish of the late Henry Carter. Abigail held her son close, staring at Charles with an expression mixing agitation and confusion. Liam had stopped crying, but his small body was still trembling. Stop this nonsense, Margaret raised her voice. Her face was contorted with anger. Who are you? My husband couldn't have had an attorney. All his legal matters were handled by Carter and Smith. Charles took an envelope from his suit's inner pocket with a gentle smile. That's correct, Margaret. However, about 10 years ago, Henry began consulting me for personal matters, especially regarding his true will. That's a lie, Sophia shouted. Father's will has already been executed. Everything was handled legally. Charles slowly opened the envelope and took out a notarized document. Yes, the apparent will was indeed executed, but this is the real, legally valid final will. Henry, for special reasons, had prepared 2 wills. He held up the document and signaled toward the screen in the venue. The contents of the document were then displayed on the screen. Under the heading Henry Carter's Final Will and Testament, dated April 15, 2019, detailed clauses were written. The late Henry Carter clearly expressed his intention to bequeath 85% of all his assets, all shares of Carter real estate, and personal property to be equally divided between Abigail Carter and his grandson, Liam Carter. A murmur arose from the venue. Margaret and Sophia turned pale and looked at each other. Thomas's father grabbed his son's arm and whispered something in his ear. Charles continued, The remaining 15% is left as living security for Margaret Carter, but she has no further rights. The management rights of Carter Real Estate are completely transferred to Abigail. He took out the next document, and this is a record showing the flow of assets over the past 3 years. It includes evidence of illegal fund transfers made by Margaret and Sophia. The screen displayed a complex array of numbers and bank transaction records. Charles continued his explanation impassively. Before Henry died of a heart attack, he was concerned about his health condition, and he worried about what might happen after his death, especially that Abigail and Liam might be treated unfairly. Tears welled up in Abigail's eyes. She hadn't known her late father had been so worried about her and had made such meticulous plans. She remembered the warm gaze she felt every time she looked at her father's picture. Henry gave me instructions after his death to monitor Margaret and Sophia's actions for 3 years and collect evidence, and to reveal the truth at the appropriate time, Charles said. He was proud that Abigail was independent. That's why he wanted to see her living by her own strength. But at the same time, he also wanted to ensure that the inheritance she rightfully deserved would certainly reach her hands. Margaret stood up, trembling with rage. This is complete nonsense. I was Henry's wife. I am the one who has the right to inherit his company's shares legally. That's not correct, Charles replied calmly. This will is legally valid and has already been submitted to the court. In fact, a judge is present here today. He nodded to a stern-faced man sitting in a corner of the venue. The man nodded slightly. This is complete fraud, Sophia shouted. We've done nothing wrong. Charles took out the last envelope. Then shall we hear Henry's own words? He took a letter from the envelope and began to read quietly. Dear Abigail and Liam, if you're reading this letter, it means Charles has acted according to my instructions, and probably you are confused right now. First, I'm sorry. I want to apologize for not revealing the truth to you for these 3 years, but there's a reason for this. I wanted to confirm your strength and ability to raise Liam, and I wanted to expose Margaret and Sophia's true nature to the world. They have been manipulating me for years, trying to use the company's assets for themselves. When my health deteriorated, they had already made their next plan to exclude you from the company and cut you off from the inheritance. but you are my true successor. Your honesty, strength, and, above all, kindness, these are the most important qualities in business, too. Liam is growing up to be a wonderful child. It's all thanks to your love and dedication. Carter Real Estate is yours, Abigail, and in the future, it will be Liam's. No matter what your mother and sister try to do, this will is legally valid. Trust Charles. He is my most trusted friend and will protect you. Finally, one more thing. I'm always proud of you, Abigail and Liam. Grandpa is always watching over you with love, Dad. When Charles finished reading, the venue was enveloped in complete silence. Tears were streaming down Abigail's cheeks. Liam was looking up at his mother with a curious face. "Mom, did Grandpa remember me?" he asked in a small voice. Abigail answered while hugging her son. "Yes, of course. Grandpa always loved you." The blood had completely drained from Margaret and Sophia's faces. Thomas's father stood up and said in an angry voice, "What is this? I was about to have my son marry into a family of fraudsters." Thomas stared at Sophia with a stunned expression, his eyes reflecting sadness and anger of betrayal. Charles approached Abigail's seat and said quietly, "Miss Abigail, Liam, let's leave this place. All legal procedures are already in progress. There's still much you need to know." Abigail stood up and took Liam's hand. She surveyed the venue with a quiet dignity. The figures of her mother and sister no longer registered in her eyes. What passed through her heart was gratitude toward her father and a determination for the new life about to begin. Charles's black sedan quietly drove away from the back entrance of the Regent Plaza. Sitting in the passenger seat, Abigail gazed at the city lights outside the window while putting a coat over Liam, who had fallen fast asleep in the back seat. Various emotions were swirling in her heart: love for her father, anger and sadness toward her mother and sister, and, above all, the shock that everything had been a lie. "You must be tired," Charles spoke quietly. "I've booked a hotel for tonight. The legal procedures will begin in earnest tomorrow, so please rest well." Abigail took a deep breath before asking, why didn't he tell me anything? Charles thought for a moment before answering, "Henry wanted to protect you. He had seen through Margaret and Sophia's schemes, but avoided direct confrontation. When his health deteriorated, he anticipated what they would do." "But why 3 years?" "That was Henry's plan. He wished for you to stand on your own feet. And he was waiting for Margaret and Sophia to hang themselves by their own actions." Charles continued with his gaze fixed on the road. "He knew you would raise Liam admirably, and he also knew you had the qualities to take over the company." Abigail quietly wiped away her tears. "I never knew Father believed in me so much. He was always proud of you. He often told me, 'Abigail is strong. No matter what happens, she can stand up.'" The next morning, Abigail visited Charles's office with Liam. Various legal documents were already prepared there: court orders, temporary injunctions, asset freezing documents. Charles had prepared everything. "Henry's true will has already been submitted to the court and authenticated," he explained. "The judge who was at the venue last night has also signed. Margaret and Sophia's assets are frozen, and all illegal fund transfers they made are legally nullified." "What happens now?" Abigail asked. Liam was in the adjacent room, having a book read to him by Charles's secretary. "First, the management rights of Carter Real Estate will be transferred to you. All company accounts will also be placed under your authority. We will demand the return of all company funds that Margaret and Sophia used." Abigail held her head in her hands. "Can I really manage such a large company?" Charles smiled. "You majored in business administration, didn't you?" Henry knew everything. He knew you had excellent grades in business school. But practical experience? There are already excellent staff, and I will also support you. Henry has left plans for that too. Over the next few weeks, Abigail's life changed dramatically. Legal battles began, but the evidence Charles had prepared was overwhelming. Margaret and Sophia lost all their property and were ordered to return the company funds they had misused. The engagement with Thomas was also broken off. and Sophia completely disappeared from high society. So did Margaret. They were forced to move to the suburbs of Boston and live quietly. Liam transferred to a new school. Abigail began going to the company every day as the CEO of Carter Real Estate. Although there was confusion at first, her management skills gradually came to be recognized within the company. "You are Henry's daughter. You've inherited his insight and kindness," one of the veteran executives remarked. Abigail quietly smiled. About 3 months after taking over her father's company, Abigail invited Charles to her home. They had begun to talk not only about work, but also about each other's lives. "There's still something you're not telling me, isn't there?" Abigail asked while pouring wine. Liam had already gone to sleep. Charles thought for a moment before answering. "Henry first contacted me 10 years ago. From around that time, he had been suspicious of Margaret and Sophia's actions. Father planned everything to protect me? Yes, he wanted to protect your and Liam's future," Charles quietly continued. "He made me make one last promise. Watch over Abigail and Liam." Abigail smiled. "You are keeping that promise." From that day on, Abigail's life became even more fulfilling. She announced a new vision for Carter Real Estate. It was about environmentally friendly housing development and a housing project to support single parents. "I want to continue my father's will and lead this company in a new direction," she declared at the board meeting. "We will become a company that contributes to society ourselves." Her proposal was unanimously approved. Abigail also established the Henry Carter Foundation, which specialized in supporting single parents. Liam also became a mascot-like figure for the foundation and began actively participating in events. "Mom, I want to help people in trouble too, just like Grandpa," Liam said one day. Abigail hugged her son and answered, "You certainly can." The relationship with Charles also deepened. He was no longer just a legal advisor, but became a good confidant for Abigail and an important presence for Liam. Charles began taking Liam to baseball games on weekends and visiting the Science Museum together. The day Abigail first entered her father's president's office, she picked up her father's picture and quietly spoke to it. "Thank you, Dad. I'll do my best." Outside the window, spring sunlight was pouring down on the city of Boston. In a small apartment in the suburbs of Boston, Margaret Carter stood by the window, gazing at the rain-soaked street. Her appearance, once adorned with luxury brands, had receded into the shadows, replaced by modest clothing. In the corner of the living room, Sophia was working at her computer. She now works as a clerk at a local real estate company. Her ties with the Bradley family had been completely severed, and her former high society friends had all left her. "Mother, would you like something to drink?" Sophia looked up and asked. Her expression no longer showed the arrogance of the past. "Thank you. I'll have some tea," Margaret answered with a sigh. A year had passed. Their lives had completely changed, from a luxurious mansion to a small apartment, from luxury cars to public transportation. Above all, they had to make a living by their own hands for the first time. That afternoon, they visited Abigail's office. A plate reading Carter Real Estate President Abigail Carter shone on the office. "Sorry to keep you waiting," the secretary said. "Please come in." When they opened the door, there was Abigail, facing her desk. She had transformed from a modest woman in a cafe uniform to a confident businesswoman. From the window, the Boston cityscape could be seen in its entirety. "Mother, Sophia," Abigail stood up to greet them. There was no hostility in her attitude, only a quiet dignity. "It's been a while, Abigail," Margaret said. Her voice was trembling. "I wanted to see you. Please sit down." Abigail indicated the sofa. As Margaret and Sophia sat down, Abigail took a seat opposite them. "We came to apologize," Sophia said quietly. "We did terrible things to you and Liam, what happened at the wedding, and about Dad's inheritance." "That's in the past," Abigail replied. "What matters is what we do now." "What do you mean?" Margaret asked anxiously. Abigail took out some documents. "This is a new arrangement I've prepared. It guarantees rent and living expenses. I intend to recognize the 15% rights that Dad originally left for you, Mother. Margaret and Sophia looked at the documents with surprised expressions. Why? Sophia asked with tears in her eyes. After what we did to you? Abigail gazed out the window. Because that's what Dad wanted. He valued family. And for Liam, his grandmother and aunt are important. The two were speechless. But there's one condition, Abigail continued. Meet with Liam once a month. He has the right to know his grandmother and aunt. Tears flowed from Margaret's eyes. For the first time, she felt genuine love for her grandson. On Christmas night, Abigail's new home was wrapped in warm light. Around the Christmas tree were Liam's friends, Carter real estate employees, and special invited guests, including Margaret and Sophia. A toast, Charles raised his glass, to a wonderful future. Abigail smiled as she looked at him. Their relationship was gradually changing from business partners to a special bond. By the snowy window, Liam picked up his grandfather's picture. Mom, I never met Grandpa, but he must have been a good person, right? Abigail hugged her son. Yes, your grandpa was the best person. And even now, he's watching over us. Outside the window, snow continued to fall quietly on the city of Boston.